Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Carol?
I have one.
Please, questions and comments.
The things they're taking away your rooms, et cetera, are they doing it to the rest of the schools in the district, or is it just Benson that gets that opportunity?
I think we're hit harder than any other building because this school it's a big footprint. I think it's almost 10 acres and 300,000 square feet or something like that. And so when they limit our enrollment and they stop, so we're not using some of the space, they see that space as, and the location. So for kids who are in special programs, this is centrally located and right next to the MAX, and the bus stops right out front. So there are lots of reasons why, but I'd say we're hit harder than any of the other schools. And I love the programs, don't get me wrong. I really like the fact that we have alternative education and all these options for kids. But I think it feels this way to our teachers. It feels this way to me, that when I do want to start up a drafting program and I'm looking for a room, and the room I want to use, which is perfect, is currently being used by another program. And then it becomes kind of a bartering. I have to ask for the room back, and we have to find another space for them, and sometimes it doesn't work. So it's a challenge.
How can you possibly train a carpenter, a machinist, or anybody that's skilled and without any architectural or mechanical drawing? How can that happen?
That's a great question, and the drafting program was cut the previous year before I came, and I think it was a decision based on kind of the program and was it really what they wanted it to be. And I think there was probably the intent to bring it back, but at that particular time, under the constraints of the staffing that we had, for whatever reason it was cut. And I agree with you. We can't have a construction I think all of these programs, the foundational class should be the drafting class. It's the how do you draw something to scale. If you have an idea, how do you put it on paper before you even go into the machine shop or start to look at that. So just as an example, one of our math teachers, Amy Slaughter, partnered with our electric teacher, Tim Harishu, to create a unit on electricity and a unit on the construction of the house, the new house that's just finished. And they did some work in the electric shop with measuring light bulbs and their life and different kinds of light bulbs. And the electric kids created a little testing apparatus for the math students, the freshman geometry students to use. And then this week, she and Tim took the class to the house. They took TriMet over there, and they were working in partners with a tape measure, the blueprints to the house, the floor plan, and some graph paper, and they were calculating the things like the surface area of the windows and the the volume of all the bathrooms combined. You know, they were doing math, but they were applying it to and looking at blueprints and trying to figure out. And she had to teach them how to draw on the paper so that their calculations would be correct. So the perfect example of why we need this. If the class was here, all of those freshmen would have already learned that skill. And they would have been able to transfer that skill and use it in this math activity. But she had to take time out to teach that to them. So I totally agree, and the teachers here have convinced me. You know, I didn't know that when I came here, but I believe it now.
If you were to donate to a program like a drafting program, how would we know that the funds would go to that program and not go into the Portland Public Schools general fund?
The way to do that is we do have an account here at school that is called it's unsolicited donations, meaning somebody just drops off a check for $500 and it goes into that account. But that account, it's under my discretion. It gets used for whatever I say it can be used for. But if you wanted to donate specifically to drafting, there is a student body account that we could create for drafting. What they won't let us do is if we get a big donation for teaching staff, like somebody comes up with $50,000 donation, then they will take that money and they will charge us to manage it, and they will dole out a certain percentage of it to all the other schools. That's how we actually get some additional money because of the money Lincoln raises for their teaching staff. but they raise enough that they don't care that it gets doled out to other schools. So there's ways around it. I think Dale's going to talk about a piece of that as well.
So, further to answer your question, one of the things that I got interested in a few months ago was a possible gift, and Phil and I have had some conversations about that. We were hoping to have something, by the time we met, but there were some questions about the best way to do it, and would it be dedicated, and a number of other questions. So the idea of a gift is still there in front of us, but we don't need to be in a race to do it. If we identify the right things, there are a couple options, and Dale will talk a little bit more about the scholarship fund that they manage. And so money could go for scholarships, but it could go for it could go for iPads or whatever, or it could go into a fund where it would be directed at some point into the drafting program, for example. And that you write a check to Benson High School, it's a tax deduction. She puts it in the fund, you designate how you want that used, and it could be then held until there was sufficient funds to do something meaningful, and then make sure that the class is getting some recognition for it. So that's all in the thinking, planning stages, and I'm hoping by the end of the summer to be able to come back to you, because we've got emails and the way to connect, to say here are some specifics that we're recommending that you consider. So that's the process we're going through right now, and Dale will talk a little bit more. The other thing is that the Alumni Association is starting to look at becoming a 501c3 nonprofit, and so any checks that went to them would then be tax deductible. And the sooner that happens, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because up until now, it's okay, you can write a check, you can be a dues-paying member, but if they want to do any serious fundraising, they really need to get into that.
Anybody who donates money and says, I want this to go for whatever, I make sure that it goes for that, and you get a letter that gets sent to you that says that, and then the program or whatever that the money's donated to, they know that that money's there, so there's not kind of some double checking. When I say that I decide, I mean I do it based on what the donor wants it to be used for. An example, we had a woman who, Catherine, I can't remember her last name, she taught here for 25 years or something, and when she died, she left $25,000 to Benson for scholarship, and in her will, she said what she wanted the money, how she wanted the money dispersed, and the attorney sends us that, and then we honored her wishes, and because of that, we were able to give some scholarship money to one of our students who is unable to apply for financial aid because he is undocumented. And that would allow him to go to college. He wouldn't have been able to, had no money and no plan to attend college. He was a very good student. So that kind of stuff, when someone does something like that, it really does benefit students, and it goes for what it's being allocated for. And because she specified in her will that it all be given away in 1 year. She didn't want it carried over, and maybe she knew that we wouldn't get it all if that was the case. If it was a scholarship account that was going to sit there and every year it was whatever, the district would have taken a portion of it to manage.